I'm getting better at that. So we'll just start with a couple of minutes to arrive. You'll hear a bell at the start, and oh dear, why can't I do that properly now? I just wanted to ring a bell. There we go. A bell at the start and a bell at the end, and just take these 2 minutes just to breathe and arrive. Oh, there we go. Amitra, I'm so sorry you arrived just as the bell went, but I figured, Mitra's used to this 2 minute start. You should be all right.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Yep.
Right, let's turn everything off on silent. Oh, right then. How are we all feeling? And hopefully now nice and refreshed, but if you're not, don't worry. Let's pop into the chat box. Couple of words. How are you feeling this afternoon? Oh, Mitra, I'm glad you followed a bit bleary-eyed with an early morning. I thought I'd wonder. Oh, Sean's a bit tired. Yeah, oh, we're all feeling a bit tired. Oh. I'm struggling to get the chat function going. Oh, dear. Okay, a couple of us starting to wake up. So some people, has this been your first proper week back in work for some people then? Getting up, getting out, back into a different routine. The weather. You know what, it's quite all right to feel a bit tired. I think Gary and I were on a call the other week when I just said, you know what, I just feel a really bit crap today. Just feel really quite down and fed up with it all. We can't be perfect all the time, all happy, clappy and wonderful. But feeling tired's all right. Feeling tired is perfectly allowed. I'm hoping that I'll just give you the next hour or so of interest. I won't make it too strenuous. Won't make it too boring either. But I won't stretch you too much. But hopefully it'll be interesting enough to keep you going and to give you something to go away with at the end of all of it. Oh, that's a lovely comment there from Reacher. Happy to be with you, lovely people. Thank you. You know what? Just needed that right now, I think. Because yeah, this is the final week, and I was thinking yesterday. I feel a bit sad actually. I feel kind of quite proud that we made it all the way through. I'm quite happy that this has gone well, I think. But also, I just thought, I'm going to miss you guys. What am I going to do on a Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock now? But, oh, my life is coming to an end. A part of it's going to come to an end. So, yeah, I'm going to miss you guys. And, well, I hope you won't miss this slot too much. But, yeah, really enjoyed doing this with you. So thank you very much. And I want to try to leave you all today with a really great starting point for your next conversation. So today is really going to be practical. You see, you didn't have any homework, any pre-work to do, apart from just looking at your plan on a page, and also hopefully thinking about and bringing an example conversation that you know you need to have, so you have a little bit of a kind of a case study to work through. Because really today is going to be working through that plan on a page and bringing it to life through the lens of your individual conversational case study that you brought with us today. I'm not going to ask you to share what your conversation is, but you're going to work in smaller breakout groups with people where you know, give them the full detail of it, but we'll go through bits and bobs of that conversation. So I thought the first place to start would be to maybe quickly run through that plan. Although I think it's fairly straightforward, I thought we would just if you want to get your sheet in front of you, or if you haven't got that, don't worry, because through the magic of Zoom, I'm going to try now to share my screen. Oh, I want to get the right page in front of me. There we go. So you can either look at it on the screen or on your bit of paper. Let's put that into present mode. There we go. So just a quick whistle stop tour through it. And I'm going to run through it in a particular order. Because I think always the best place to start with any kind of plan, or before you do anything really, is where do you want to get to? Start with the end in mind. So here's this big box there in the middle of a successful outcome. So I think we should really start there. And before we get into doing any other thinking or planning, what is it you want to achieve from having this conversation? So that's why that box is there, for which we'll do in a minute, for you to fill in. What would a successful, a positive, a great conversation look like for you in terms of the outcome, the solution you want to get to? But also I think it's really helpful to kind of then describe and brainstorm almost what's going on. So conversation isn't just the end bit when you get to an agreement or to do something. It's how does it feel? What are you saying? What are you doing? What's the atmosphere like? What's the other person saying or doing? Maybe where is that conversation? On what day of the week? Maybe what room will you be in? I think the more detail that you can get to describe what that successful outcome is, the more likely you are to achieve it. So I would start with that box. What's that successful outcome? Capture that. And we're going to do a little exercise on that in a few minutes' time. Then I'll take you to the top right-hand corner there, which asks you then about some assumptions that you're making. There's some assumptions you're making about this person, but I'll just broaden it slightly and say, what are the assumptions you might be making about the conversation itself as well? So the next bit to do on your plan is to really think about what are those assumptions. Don't worry if you think they're good, bad, indifferent. At the moment, when we go through that part, I'll ask you to just jot down what are the assumptions that you're making about the person, the conversation, what might happen, what might not happen. Getting it out and acknowledging those is the first step. So what are the assumptions that you're making there? That's my list. And then some other bits you might start to find familiar when I talk about what do you find threatening, what are your warning signs, and then you've got something similar on the other side, like the other person, what they might find threatening and what are their warning signs. Remember, that goes back to our SCARF model and our fight, flight, freeze behaviours that we did a couple of weeks ago. So that's the next part of that plan, is to get out and to understand what are your warning signs, what might their warning signs be. And then there's the what if plan. towards the bottom left-hand corner of the column on the left. Remember we did that a couple of weeks ago as well? If something happens, then this is what I will do. So the top half of that plan, hopefully you could see what it's doing is getting you to think about all of these models that we've done a couple of weeks ago and applying those to the conversation that you're going to have. The one thing I forgot to point out, I think it's a bit obvious at the top, I suppose, you've got a column that's all about you, and you've got a column that's all about the others, which actually now when I say that sounds like a horror film of some sort about the others. I didn't quite know, the other people, your conversation E. When you coach someone, you have a coach E, or you have a mentee, the other person. That's what I'm trying to get there. Not the others as like a horror film, but the other person you're going to have a conversation with. So that top part of the plan is designed to get you thinking and putting into practice the models that we've talked about and we've gone through in these past couple of weeks. And then just very quickly, just to point to the bottom left-hand corner is a bit of a new, but I think a relatively simple model that we'll go through today. And it's a guide that you could use to help you get through the conversation. And then on the bottom right-hand corner, you've got some sentences that you may want to use to start you off in the conversation. But I'm going to stop any detail there now. That's just a whistle-stop tour to show you what's what and what's where on the plan. But as I said, a good place to start is the outcome. Now, I don't quite know who said this, but there's a bit of a quote around, is it a goal without a plan is just a wish? So that's why I'm trying to give you this one plan on a page. If you plan to have a good conversation, you're more likely to have a good conversation rather than just going in without any idea of what success looks like or how you're going to get there. So what I'd like to do to start off today, if you guys are comfortable with this, is we'll start with looking at this piece here, the successful outcome. That's the first step in taking your wish into a plan. So I'm going to, for a minute, stop sharing here and bring everybody back. Always nicer to see people and to see a bit of paper in front of us. So this successful outcome, the more we can understand what we want that to be, the more we can describe it, well, the more likely we are then to make decisions that's going to guide us in that right direction. And this, I do sometimes get a bit of bee in the bonnet. What I'm not going to ask you to do is write a SMART objective or anything like that for the conversation. All I think I'm going to ask you to do is just think about and describe what does success look like. I've got a little bit of an example that we could use here. Flicking my slides around for a minute. This might help. How might we describe two different types of meetings? I've picked on these two different types of meetings because if I'm honest, I've heard some people talk about these sorts of meetings as we've gone through the process. You don't have to use these as your conversations. They're whatever conversations you're going to have. But if I was going to describe as an example a redundancy consultation meeting, what does a successful outcome look like? Some of the things I might be saying is, well, actually, for it to be successful, I want to make sure that I give the accurate information across. To be successful, I need to show that I'm really taking ownership for that message. I might want the other person who's called John, that he feels he's listened to and that he can ask questions. I want the atmosphere to be courteous, kind and calm maybe. And I'm going to write down any questions I don't know the answer to. Maybe that's my successful outcome of a redundancy consultation meeting. Another example could be a feedback meeting. If I want to give somebody feedback. So I could be describing what's success for me. Well, I need to make sure that I can explain how that other person, Sarah, their behaviour made me feel. I want to remain calm and not be personal about Sarah or her behaviour. I want to make sure that this person, Sarah, she's had the chance to respond to me and explain her reasonings. And I really need to listen to Sarah's reasonings. But above all, what I want as a solution is I want to ask her that she doesn't say or do that to me again, and instead that she comes to talk to me privately. So can you see that there's no real rules around how you describe a successful outcome, other than it gives you enough detail to know what you're aiming towards, not just as an outcome, how's it going to feel like as well. Well, I want us to have a try at that as a activity first of all. So if I stop sharing there for a minute, my other toolbar comes back. I'm going to split you into some groups. I think we'll just do 2 groups today. We'll not do 3. And taking your individual conversations that you have brought with you today in your smaller groups, help each other to draft what a successful outcome for those meetings are. And if your successful outcome looks different to the person you're working with, don't worry, because every conversation or every meeting is going to look different. This is your opportunity to really draft out what am I aiming towards here? What is my goal that is a goal with a plan, not just a wish? So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. I'm going to break you. That sounds not very helpful there then. So we've got a bit less than that. I'm going to put you into 3 groups, as we normally do randomly. Don't know who you're going to end up with. I'm going to give you a good, I think I'm going for 12 minutes here. You have a really good discussion. Each of you just to come out with enough of a description for you to be comfortable. Help each other, make some suggestions. But don't force anybody into taking your description if that doesn't work for you. So I will see you all in just over 10 minutes. Take care. Oh, it's a slow one today. There we go. Set a timer for 11 minutes.
Okay, 11 minutes of counting.
Almost done.
Well, what is it you want me to go? Have you thought about it? How useful this is. How useful is it? I've never had to do it every day.
Yeah, okay. You all make different noises now when you come back into the main room.
We're in mid-flight.
How can everything change so much?
Is this for the upgrade?
Well, yeah, it was an upgrade for me, but I was a little bit naughty because my Mac is an old Mac, and technically speaking, it doesn't hold, it won't do Catalina. But I found some YouTube video, like so dodgy. I thought, oh, you do it like this, and you get, and it does work. But yeah, everything's just now different. With a new world completely. So, I'm just a bit curious. What was that like as an experience to draft a successful outcome? What was it like for you?
I think we probably needed more time.
Okay.
Well, because we explored each of our situations, and then we're perhaps moving on to think about strategies for taking it forward.
Ah.
I don't know whether others would agree with that. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was when you start the conversation, you start talking. Actually, it's quite easy to pick up the flow and move very quickly into strategy. And some of that could be to do with us all being experienced in it, but probably just because we want to get to the answer quickly, or other people can help us.
Yeah, it's our natural, well, I could do this, and this. And I think that's why I was maybe a bit mean. What was it like just to be told, no, don't do any doing, just do what does success look like? We've had two people kind of say, oh, I was a bit keen to go on. Any different experiences or perspectives from anybody? Were you all in that same boat of, I want to get on and just do it? Yeah, I can see some nodding heads now, yeah. So I was a bit mean and a bit naughty. No, I wasn't naughty, I was a bit mean. Quite often, we naturally want to get on and do. And a lot of times, particularly in the corporate world, we're told about, action, take action, make it happen, get on with it. But sometimes, unless we stop and think, actually, what does a good job look like? Or actually, what do I want to do? We can be halfway down the wrong avenue, completely having the wrong conversation, in the wrong tone, in the wrong place. And then you come out and you think, oh, I didn't really get from that conversation what I really wanted and what I really needed. Now, we don't have to spend weeks and weeks and hours thinking this through, but just a couple of minutes. What does success look like? I fell into this trap the other day, and this is a different kind of conversation. I was talking to my ex-husband, my daughter's father, just about, oh, how do we do socially distancing when Sean's going to come around and stay with him and they want to have the barbecue? How are we all going to do that? And I hadn't really thought through the what and the how. And halfway through, I found myself, well, just chill out. Just look, what are you trying to achieve here? I really had lost the plot around what was important for me in that conversation. The thing that was important for me was Dawn would go and see her family from her father's side and have a nice time. That was the first and foremost. But yeah, that we all kind of kept safe. I got myself so wound up in, take care of this and take care of that. And hang on, Rhiannon, what are you trying to do here? What's the purpose of this conversation? And I'd lost it. I hadn't lost it in my temper. I'd lost you just go around in circles now, leave it. You're there, it's okay. So sometimes if we're not really clear what we want to get out of a conversation before we even go into it, it you've got very little hope in hell of having a good conversation, particularly if it's a difficult one that you know you're going to be a bit anxious about. So that was trying to make you stop and think, what am I trying to achieve here? And then that will give you a kind of a rock to cling on to hold on to, if all the rivers around you are running and pushing you away. Well, that's my rock. This is what I'm trying to do here. So that's the purpose of 8. What's a successful outcome? The next thing I'd like us to think about on the plan here is assumptions. Now, I never get this right, but isn't there something that, a nice little thing that talks about if we assume makes an arse, is it out of you?
That's it, you and me, I think, is what it is.
Yeah.
I know the count on you, Chris. That's good, that's good. And as much as it's a funny little silly throwaway line, it's really, really true. The assumptions that we make, well, actually, let's just be realistic. Assumptions are completely natural and completely normal. It's what our brains do. We make assumptions, we draw conclusions, we assume things. The reason why we do that is it's our brains creating kind of a little shortcut, also known as heuristics. It's what our brain does because there's so much information that our brain takes in every day. If you think of information, data as what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we can touch. There's so much information coming in, it would be impossible for our brains to process each bit of that information as if it is new all the time. We would never make any decision, we would never do anything. So our brain creates these shortcuts so that we can basically, move on and survive. And the shortcuts are based on so many different things: our previous experiences, our education, our influence, the fact that we now all know how to cross the road, stop, look and listen. There's an example of a shortcut that your brain has given you. The thing is, sometimes these assumptions are really helpful, and sometimes these assumptions are not very helpful. So there are times, obviously, making an assumption can save lives or make things a lot safer. But if we're going into a difficult conversation already with some assumptions in our mind about how things are going to go, our brain will naturally then look for evidence to support those assumptions. So if we're going in feeling nervous, thinking, oh, this is going to be terrible, this is going to be awful, all our brain is going to do is try to find things that confirm that it's right. So assumptions. Can you think of a time, and we'll use the chat function here, I think, maybe, where maybe assumptions could help us in situations. So sometimes assumptions are good and they can help us. Let's have some examples of when that could be. Just pop your thoughts into the chat. I'll give you a minute or two to think about it. When you've got something in your mind, just pop some thoughts down. We've got Rashawn there. Can help, yes, can help you prepare. Yeah. And so, yeah, Nietzsche, if you think the outcome is going to be positive. Yeah. I'm wondering, Gary, if there's something about structural engineering, having assumptions about what could happen, would happen. Shirley makes a good point there, yeah. Assumptions can sometimes keep us safe and keep us alive, can't they? When we see something that's glowing red, it could be natural to assume that that's dangerous or that could be hot. There are some things that assumptions are positive. Maybe let's look at it on the other side then. When could having a set of assumptions or having an assumption be a negative or not so helpful. Oh, sorry, Gary. I think my chat's very slow coming through. I like what you said. Structural engineering is largely based on assumptions. Yeah, I hope so. So good or bad? Let's broaden it. When are assumptions good, and when are they not so good and could derail us? Yes, meet to that when they're triggered by your own perceived threats. And I think it's a really great word. They're perceived, isn't it? What we think might be threatening for us. And Chris, absolutely. Assumptions can stop us from being creative. That will never work here. That will never work. I've just had a conversation, believe it or not, with my daughter's school when I was asking about, can they not do more learning like this via Zoom? No, it's a safeguarding issue. So the assumption is they can't do anything visible. It's a safeguarding issue. What if it wasn't then? What could you do if it wasn't? But no, we've got an assumption around how we need to deliver this teaching. Oh, turn into a soap opera, Sian. What do you mean by that? Take us off mute and tell us that.
So you could have an assumption that by the time you've worked it through in your head and thought about it and worried about it and procrastinated about it, it's this great big soap opera. So instead of just being one episode, it's the whole of EastEnders over the last 20 odd years going off in there.
I love that example, yeah. But you're dead right. A little assumption can start off with, and it was boom, but it's just massive at the end of the day, isn't it? And yeah, then we've got a soap opera, not a conversation.
Yeah.
Yes, preconceived ideas that aren't true, Shirley, you're absolutely right. And then, and as Kristen says, I think it thinks that we drive the conversation can only then go in one direction. So assumptions have probably kept us alive over these millions of years. And most definitely from what Gary is saying, it probably keeps the roof safe above our head. But sometimes assumptions can also be very unhelpful and derail us. The thing is, we can't stop us jumping to assumptions, which lead to conclusions. It's very hard for us to stop that. But what we can do is get them out there. Is to kind of literally write them down and name them. And if we know that that's the assumptions that we're making, we can start to challenge ourselves then. So, just a little point of reminder, because remember the results cone model that I showed you the other week? We talked about the output, your achievements being at the top. Beneath there was behaviours. Beneath there was thinking, thought patterns, and then mood as well. That's kind of where these assumptions are in your thinking and your thought patterns. We can see how much they do shape our actions. And if we manage to shift some of our assumptions or thinking and thought patterns, how different our actions could be. I'm just going to give you now a couple of minutes thinking about your example, your case you've got in front of you. What assumptions might you be making about the person or that up-and-coming conversation? Just have a couple of minutes to think that, jot that down in front of you. Okay, just give you the last few minutes, or a few seconds to be honest. Okay. You may not have got all your assumptions down. Hope it's at least given you enough time to think, oh yes, I can see, and start to flow out of your brain, I suppose. Can you see where we're going with the top half of this plan? We've started with where we want to get to, our successful outcome, our conversation. We've started to unpick some of the assumptions we may be making. And at this point, you'll be able to stand back and start to think, are some of those assumptions helpful? Or could some of those assumptions potentially be blocking or restricting my thinking here? What I'm not going to do is to dive around the rest of the boxes at the top half, because you're probably, I actually think not probably, I think you are pretty much experts at the old SCARF model and the feeling and understanding your threats. So I'm going to leave you with some homework after the session to complete the rest of the boxes. So then what you'll have is a clear, right in the middle of the page, what I want to achieve, and some of the boxes around could be either there helping you or hindering you. This shouldn't take you hours. This should be a 15, 20 minutes at the start when you're not used to it, planning out what your conversation is going to look like with some of the warning signs. If you know the kind of things that make you feel threatened, how you react when you do feel threatened, you can then start to make some assumptions about the other person, and particularly if you know them, what they might find threatening, and you may be aware of some of their warning signs as well. Getting this down on the page will then let you do a bit of a if-then plan. So if I do this, or if they do that, then I'll do this instead. But until you've got this all out on a bit of paper, you don't know, it's not visible. So in your own time, complete the rest of these boxes for your conversation, and then stand back and look and just think, wow, what is this telling me about what I want to achieve and some of the things that I need to do or not do to help me achieve that. So that's almost kind of like your pre-thinking. What I want to do now with the remainder of our call is just to have a look at the bottom half of that plan as well. Because in my simple little brain, I keep the top half as a little bit of a prep to do beforehand, and the bottom half is a bit more of a, I'm in the moment, what the hell do I do? You can see how my brain works. I'm quite a simple woman, really. So the cycle on the bottom half of the page. Oh, now let me just double check. I'm not moving along too quickly for everybody. Is this, are we all right to move on? Thank you. I got into the flow and I forgot to check there. So the little cycle on the bottom left-hand side of the page. Over the years, I realised, through making my own mistakes, and I'm talking this through other people, probably the hardest bit is actually getting started with a conversation and then knowing what the hell do I say in that conversation. We could do all this prep work at the top, and I know what I want to get to, and I know what I need to try to avoid doing or what I do need to do. And for quite a while, people would ask me, well, can you give me scripts? Can you tell me what I've got to say? And at the moment, it's because I'm afraid it's just topical at the moment with some of the groups that I network within. I'm hearing a lot of HR people asking for, can we give our line managers scripts to follow during redundancy consultation meetings? It's a tough one to do, it really is, in terms of why do we need a script? Does anybody find, what's your thoughts on scripts? Are they helpful or are they not so helpful? Put something in a chat box or take yourself off mute. Are scripts helpful or not so helpful?
I personally find that to I prefer doing a pre-meeting with the manager, so then they know what to say instead of doing it but from a word for word, because sometimes some of them who are inexperienced will literally just stick to the script and won't explore further. Instead, where there's probing questions you could ask, instead they're like, oh no, got to go back to the script, next question now. So sometimes it's not that positive.
Yes,
they're very helpful right at the very beginning, so you know what you're going to say at the start of the meeting. So there's always that thing, and you can always practice that a little bit. But knowing what you're going to say when you start is really important. And then you are picking up Katie's point, you then need to be flexible about the way the conversation goes. But having a clear start for me is very important.
It's also useful for people to have that things to expect to hear, so a bit of ask these questions or present this kind of have this approach, but expect to hear things or it's useful for people who are new to doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the point you put in the chat box, doesn't it, Mitra, around the level of experience, whether someone's done this before or not. I'm with you completely. What I realise with the script is it's great if that other person sticks to the script. As soon as they don't stick to the script, it's a load of rubbish. It was like when I first when I was learning French in school. I could ask, I knew how to order pizza, and I knew what to say. And then you went into the restaurant in France, and they didn't answer you with the words that you've been taught. I don't know what's going on. So yes, I think scripts can be a great guide, but they can also be a real restriction as well. But I love your point, Chris, about getting started, because I think that's the most difficult thing to do. So over time, I figured out, I found these models and these approaches, and these are the kind of things that seem to work with me. So the bottom left-hand corner is not a script, but it's a kind of a expect, or this is what might happen, without going into the detail of the situation, because every conversation will be different. But I quite like using this cycle of start off with a kind of an inquiry, what's their view on a situation, but not starting the conversation with asking that question. You start off with, this is my point of view, and I'd like to understand from your perspective too. So you do put across what you want to get across, but it finishes off with that other person knowing and feeling that you want to get their perspective as well. And that's why I call it inquiry. They'll then give you some kind of information, their perspective. You may or you may not agree with it, but what you absolutely can do is acknowledge it. And that's the honouring their position. And then you can start to build solutions. There's a couple of things happened to me in my career when I first found this. And then I came across Jim Tam. I was going to the guy with the chickens that you're probably familiar with. But why do I like this cycle so much? I've got a little extract from Jim Tam's video that you watched, I think, back in the first or the second week. So I'm just going to show only about a minute of it, but I think it illustrates really well why this inquiry type cycle can really work with a difficult conversation. So let me go across. I've got him there. Share my screen and the sound. Okay, you just got about a few seconds before he goes into the exact.
Oh, that's true. Why don't we just stay non-defensive and keep a more collaborative green zone mindset all the time? So I'd like you to try something with me that may give you some insight into that question. I would like you to use all your creativity and empathy to let yourself become one with this piece of paper. Know what it feels like to be this piece of paper. Nice and cool to the touch and crisp edges and a few sharp corners and a few wrinkles like some of us have. So in just a minute, I'm going to ask you all to take a deep breath. We'll do this all together. And as you exhale, I would like you to focus all your attention on this piece of paper and just see if it's possible for you to breathe yourself right into this piece of paper and become one with it. Okay, is everybody ready? All right, go. Okay, everybody have that now? Got it? Now, anybody want to collaborate with me right now? Or build a relationship with me right now? Or more likely, anybody have any really strong negative red zone feelings towards me?
Sorry, I ended that rather abruptly. It's only a short clip. Do you remember that bit? And this is what I always have this in my mind. What we're trying to do here with any kind of difficult conversation, it really is build collaboration. Although you want to come out with a particular end point, which you've captured in your successful outcome, you've captured there, you were never going to get there in an easy way unless it feels collaborative. See, every time I listen to Jim, I get all excited about it. I think he's such a really great practitioner, but he's done so much work and it's just so accessible. But in my head, there's a difference between acknowledging, which is on this cycle here, and agreeing with. What we don't want to be doing is getting sucked into agreeing with their view, but we want to acknowledge that that lovely white sheet of paper is a lovely white sheet of paper, because that's what they feel. I see where you're coming from. I can understand your perspective. And I did have to kind of go back to, well, what do I mean? What's the difference between acknowledging and agreeing? So I went and did a bit of a Google, because there is quite a difference. Can you hope you can see the slides now? Here we go, we're loading. Agreement is where two people got the same opinion. Acknowledgement is just accepting or recognizing, what I would say, someone's opinion. And there's quite a difference. With a difficult conversation, you don't have to agree with the other person's perspective, but to turn a difficult into a satisfactory conversation and to get that collaboration, it's about acknowledging, yes, that's a good, I see your point. Oh, I understand what you mean now. I can see why that's important to you now. Well, that's a different perspective I hadn't considered. At no point am I agreeing and say, oh, you're right and I'm wrong. I'm just acknowledging, honouring their position, showing that I understand where they stand. So let's have a little brainstorm. Let's use I get a nice whiteboard going here. Let's get some ideas of what kind of phrases or words, or indeed body language, you could use to show someone that you're acknowledging their point. If I get a whiteboard going, in the meantime, you could just have a think and then start to jot down what words, phrases, or indeed body language could you use in a conversation with someone to show that you're acknowledging and you've heard their point of view. Okay, so arms are not crossed. Yes. Eye contact, nodding, great. We've got nodding going along there, yeah. I can understand why you might have come to that conclusion. I like that one. However, might feel a little bit like a bucket of cold water. Yeah, verbal cues, yeah, yep, smiling. I accept, understand your position. I think I've got one that's hidden underneath my little, yes, nodding going on the top there as well. I see your position, yeah, like that, nodding. What I'm hearing is, lovely, that's a playing back to them what they have said to you. You can paraphrase slightly there in that also, but that's a really great way, playing back to them so they can, yes, you really have taken the time to listen to me. I'm ideally use some of their words back to them. I like that. I'm glad you feel you could say this. Yes, absolutely. So there's nothing in there that is, oh yeah, I agree. Oh, I can use that. Allowing them to finish their statement and their sentence, yeah. We're not agreeing. We're not saying that they're right, or we're not getting into who's right or who's wrong. Just when this has happened to you, when someone has acknowledged, oh yes, I see your point. There's no need, there's nothing that gets our defensiveness up, is there? It's the opposite almost. It's the, oh, they've heard me. Yeah, right. That keeps us far more on an adult conversation rather than a parent-child, where a parent may be saying, no, you are wrong, or even a child saying, yeah, okay, I agree, you're right, I'm wrong. We're far more there on the adult conversation. Now that's it. I think that's everything up there. So brilliant. So I'm going to save this. Okay, so all of those phrases are there saved for you. So and you could use them at any point that you want to in your conversation to the acknowledge side. Now I'm just going to stop sharing that for a minute, and if you just have a look back at the cycle in the bottom left hand side of your sheet. Just as a quick recap, we've got inquiry, and actually I think what I didn't pull out and make clear, how inquiry is starting off that conversation. Starting off that conversation that sets out what you want to talk about, but immediately lets them put their point of view across. To the right-hand side are some examples, if you want to use some example sentences to start that conversation off. I think I rushed over this point earlier, I'm afraid. I find the hardest thing to do is to start off a conversation. There's a couple of sentences that you could use to start you off. I think both Chris and Mitra pulled that point out. Starting it off is difficult. So if we think about inquiry, we start off the conversation, and you've got some examples there of phrases you could use. We move on to listening and acknowledging their position. We don't have to agree with it, but we can listen and then acknowledge their position. And do you know what? If you've got this point and you've done your plan above, understanding what you want to achieve, challenging some of your assumptions, mitigating the risk of threat, you're 80% there to mastering that difficult conversation. You are probably now talking on an adult position because of all that thinking that you have done and the listening that you're doing to them. You're going to have activated that front part of your brain because you're in an adult mode, which is your executive functioning, your bit of your brain that you use to do the proper thinking. Your amygdala doesn't need to be activated because you have mitigated the risk. You're there. You are probably having a decent conversation right now. And if as part of that decent conversation, after hearing their perspective, your successful outcome has shifted slightly, that's okay as well. Remember, your successful outcome, what you wanted to achieve, was only part of the description of what that good conversation looked like. You're probably having a rational conversation. You probably are being calm, kind, and courteous. There will be lots of other things that you will be achieving. And having that rational conversation might lead you to a slightly different outcome. It's even better than you thought originally. Just going to give you a couple of minutes now just to reflect on what we've just gone through there. Jot down any kind of aha moments or any key thoughts you want to take away. And then I'm just going to invite anybody that would like to just to share some of your key thoughts that you want to take away.
going back to the spiral diagram or the circular diagram, I quite like that, the piece in the middle. It says if the conversation comes out of stereo, go back to inquiry, which is pretty obvious, but yeah, that chimed with me. I thought that's sensible. Should try and remember that.
Yep, such a good point, Gary, there, yes. And you've reminded me, I haven't really picked up on that point, but you've done it for me. Getting stuck in, well, look, I'm going to stop for a minute and let you just jot things down. Okay, just a couple more seconds to finish off that sentence. Right then. So I can see some of you have problems with the internet. I've got to be honest, I'm finding the same as well. So sometimes I'm looking and thinking, have I frozen or are you actually just writing down? So I hope that we're going to get the last couple of minutes out of this, and I hope our internet kind of lasts for that. Gary, I wouldn't mind you just mentioned about the point in the middle. That was one of the things that has resonated with you. Could you just maybe share that again and see if other people have got a similar perspective as well?
Yeah, I suppose it's again, I think as I said earlier, it's you look at it and think if the conversation becomes adversarial, go back to the inquiries. You know, it's that classic common sense thing, but it's that ability to realise that in the heat of the moment, you know, and not go all childlike with your responses. You know, actually keep that adult to adult conversation going, and like I say, take that step back to the inquiry stage. Say, okay, well, why have we got to this flashpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder if that could be captured as maybe an assumption, or something as a warning, like, if I get stuck, right, am I assuming? Because when you're in confrontation, most of the time, because I think you're only saying that, Gary, because and it's actually because I'm making an assumption. I think Gary's only saying that because he thinks I'm an idiot. Gary's only saying that to try to get one up on me. Is that an assumption? And I've got to be honest, I know some of my defensiveness comes from really not particularly strong self-esteem. I think, well, you're really going to say that because you want me to look bad, you're trying to be better than me. No, it's not, Rhiannon. So that's always in some of my assumptions. Am I just assuming the worst here? And am I assuming this person is trying to beat me or to challenge me? No, they're not. I don't know. Maybe there's some relationship there between some assumptions that we're making that then leads to conflict.
I think there could be almost a loop around inquiry, acknowledge, inquiry, acknowledge. There's almost a conversation to be had around there. I suspect this is not linear in that sense, but it does seem to me at the very beginning. And it says if the conversation becomes adversarial, what happens if it starts adversarially?
What happens if it does start adversarially? Anyone got any thoughts?
I think I would stop the meeting. And I do that on numerous occasions. If someone's got a preconceived idea when they come into a meeting, it's very difficult to change that sometimes, and it's the attitude that they bring with them. So sometimes I just stop the meeting, we take a breather, we meet later on, or we meet the next day.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes as well it's helpful just to let that individual have the opportunity to get what they're thinking and feeling off the
Yes.
Often once it's out there, then you can start to see them. I'm not saying deflate's the wrong word. Can't think of the right word in the moment. But they do, then they'll start to come back down, won't they? And then you can move into, you know, more listening and acknowledgement.
Yeah, perhaps the worst thing to do is to try to stop them.
Yeah.
Because it just builds up the pressure.
Yeah. And I often think of, you know, from being in HR and in some, you know, not nice situations like consultations, site closures, things like that. You know, when someone's say at risk of redundancy, no response is the wrong response. Because they're in an awful situation and everybody will deal with it in a way that's right for them. And actually, part of helping them through that change curve is to let them get that emotion and thoughts out. Once they've done that, you can then start to help. But sometimes until you let that happen, you can't help them move on.
No, I get that, but I think at that moment in time, you can't move forward because the emotion is in the room.
Yeah. Which is your point, isn't it, about, I suppose, of let's take a break and come back. Yeah. No, it's a good shout.
I had a situation earlier this year where a client he had an issue with contracting the whole, and it was just the fact that I was at the phone, I was the person he spoke to, he just lost it with me completely. And I take your point, Tracy, about actually just stopping the meeting now, but I kind of got the sense that, you know, he was going rattling on about the fact he was going to phone up the institution, my professional body, and get me reporters and all that sort of thing. And I kind of just let him blow the wind out of his sails. You know, I said, right, do you want me to come to the site? And it kind of disarmed him at that point to think, oh, actually, we're going to attempt to have some sort of resolution here. You know, so I went to site later on that afternoon, and we're not in any way, shape, or form best friends. Don't get me wrong, but we've got to the end of it. You know, we've got over the hurdle.
That's a great example there, I think, of parent-adult-child in action. Now, whether he started off as a critical parent or a child, I'm not quite sure, depending on what he said. You held your position at adult. Okay, let's have a meeting about this. Let's meet on site. Your response held straight there at adult. I suspect you also, by doing that, acknowledged his position in this little cycle here. You didn't say no, yeah, but no, but. Okay, you hear what you're saying? Let's meet in face to face and let's put this right.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, Rhiannon. Sorry, did I interrupt you?
No.
Because sometimes when you've got that angst going on, it's almost like, well, we're hearing you, but sort of, it's almost reiterating the ground rules or what you are going to do when you next get together. So maybe, like Tracy says, sort of stop the meeting, you know, and re sort of confirm what you are going to do in a not in an adversarial sort of way, more of a trying to calm and reassure sort of way. So we are going to listen to your point of view. We're going to go through this process. You'll get every chance to say what you need to say, that type of thing.
So it's so interesting, though, that what I'm hearing is a number of different well, different types of conversations that you're having, from redundancy to dealing with clients, all different types of but the same tools or tactics are what's making you successful. And it ain't a script, is it? It ain't knowing what to say. It's absolutely knowing how you handle yourself. Which does give me a really warm feeling, because the majority of this programme has been about not what you say, but how you handle yourself. So it does show that the common theme here that you can apply in a number of different settings is less about what you say and more about how you do. So, oh, sorry, Tracy.
Yeah, can I just add something? It's also the ambience you create, the room where you position yourself. I always sit with my back to a wall, so someone entering the room is coming through the door, so I'm not trapping them in. And it's all about that body language and giving them the opportunity to get up and leave if they so wish to. Not that they do, but they've got that opportunity, so I'm not threatening. So I think about that a lot, as with what I'm going to say, but I think about the ambience of where I am. And I'm very clear in the detail that I give them before they get to the meeting, so we know what the meeting's about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely spot on. So if you were to use your plan on a page here, part of your successful outcome could be that room setup. Could be that you create an ambience where they know that they can leave at any time. This is why this plan could be so flexible for your needs. But just taking those couple of minutes to think that through in the context of the conversation you want to have can take you from being really quite anxious or unhappy about a conversation to being pretty much 80% there before you even open your mouth to say anything.
Mm. I think when you asked us to write our phrase down earlier, what I just put is sort of all-encompassing, is don't underestimate the value of preparing the conversation. But it's not just the conversations with Tracy. Tracy's point. It is the setting and the ambience. There's nothing worse than, you know, people being seen in the wrong place or by the wrong person, in the wrong mood, etc.
I don't know whether this is at all possible, but also practicing it on a colleague who knows the person that you're dealing with, because they may be able to. You can kind of have the difficult thing is doing in a difficult situation for the first time for real. And perhaps sometimes having a conversation with a colleague about who knows the individual, saying, if I say this, how are they likely to respond? So you kind of get a sense of how the conversation might go.
Brilliant idea, Chris. Absolutely. Because it's the first time we have that conversation. It's the hardest time, isn't it?
Yes, it has to be good first time.
And as much as we try to make this program a bit practical, and that's why I keep banging on about going to do your homework and practice. Yeah, the first time's hard. The second time's a bit easier, but every time, honestly, at the end of it, you feel wonderful because you have really tried and thought more than just, I'm going to have a conversation. You know, I've put into practice some stuff that I've learned. And that's kind of where I want to leave you. I don't really want to leave you feeling nervous and anxious, but I want to leave you realizing, I can do this. I realize that the first time might make me feel a little bit sick, but I've got enough underpinning tools and knowledge with the models that we've talked about. I've got enough self-awareness now about what I find threatening, and I've got enough awareness about how I may inadvertently be creating threatening situations for other people. And I've got a plan or a structure that I can follow for the next time I have what I know is going to be a difficult conversation. I can't take away that anxiousness feeling. That anxiousness feeling is a good thing. Embrace it. It makes you put on the brakes and think twice. Hopefully what I've given you enough to have more confidence to go and take that first step. So I'm conscious we're coming to the end of the time. And genuinely what I said at the start, I'm going to miss you guys. I am very, very grateful for you to turn up every week and to do this and to take part. I do hope you've got benefit back as well. Let's just have a very quick whistle through. What have we done in the last month? We better understood about feeling safe and feeling threatened around from a brain perspective, a social perspective. We learned about our fight, flight, freeze behaviours. We've learned a bit about how we can manage our emotions. We learned about if-then plans, which hopefully you'll see are highly flexible. We've learned a little bit about being adults and a bit about where empathy fits in. We've learned about moods and thinking and how that affects our results. Blimey heck, and now we've got a plan to make it all happen. We've actually done an awful lot in really what is no more than a normal one-day workshop, just spread about over a series of weeks. So what I've traditionally done is left you with an E, isn't it, or ending with clarity as to where we're going to go next. Well, where we're going to go next really now is dependent on you. And I thought rather than give you a these are the next steps, I found this. Oh, and I'm going to press the wrong button now. And I thought this might give you a bit of focus for where we go next. Here we go. Inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. If you want to conquer fear, don't sit at home and think about it. Go out and get busy. I think it's kind of what we've just said. Go out now and practice. Put this into practice. Don't worry about how it feels the first time. Go out and do it. What I'm not saying is don't use your plan. Use your plan, but go out and then put that plan and that practice into motion. Thank you so much for all of you for making this such an enjoyable programme for me. I hope it's also shown you how easy it is to learn remotely, and we don't always need to pile into a meeting room or a training room somewhere to do this. I've got one final request for you guys, and that is my feedback. This was a pilot, and I felt it a bit clunky along the way, and I've learned to do things differently. I hope it hasn't felt too clunky for you guys. But what I'm going to do is send out another Survey Monkey tomorrow. And genuinely, because life is all about learning, I'm really keen to hear your feedback on the pilot so that I can improve it for the next time round. And if you really have found this beneficial, you know, I'll be honest, the best feedback you can give me is a recommendation to friends, colleagues, or someone else in your network as well. This is just one of many different topics that we do here at Blue Grape. And progressively, they're all going to be going online like this. So I would say go forth, master those tricky conversations, and generally be awesome, because you guys are. And if you can help me along the way by giving me some feedback, that will be even better. If I could reach out and give you a hug or a handshake right now, I would, but I can't because we're all so far away. But thank you so much. And hopefully our paths will cross again soon. Don't forget my feedback. Thank you very much, everybody. Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye all. Thanks ever so, Rhiannon.
Take care.
Everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Lovely
Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Bye.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.